Guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. Now, in today's video, guys, I am going to be doing a review on the newest installment entry in the Saw franchise, Saw X, and I am pleasantly surprised by this movie, as you could probably tell from my initial reaction. Before I get onto this review, however, I do obviously have a few more movies that I need to do reviews for this weekend. Today I'm going to be watching Dumb Money, and so I'm going to try to get a review out for that as soon as possible. And I also got to watch The Creator for this weekend, so stay tuned for that as well. I'm going to try to see that as quick as possible. And next up on my radar is going to be Exorcist Believer. The month of October is going to actually be a lot slower than I initially expected. I have 3 movies on my radar as of right now, but it's going to be a pretty slow month because the Taylor Swift movie is coming out, and so there's going to be a pretty big interval between the beginning of October and the ending of October when, like, FNAF comes out and a few other movies that are on my radar. And so I'm not really sure, like, how frequently I'm going to be uploading content, but I would like to do some more rankings and stuff like that. I'm going to be making, multiple Saw rankings after this video. I think I want to do a twist, like a ranking of all the twist endings of all of the Saw movies, as well as a ranking of, obviously, just the Saw movies in general. I'm still thinking about the twist ones, but for sure I'm going to be doing a ranking of all of the Saw movies, so make sure you stay tuned for that. I'm going to be working on that right after I get this review out. And I think that's pretty much it for announcements. Let me know of any video ideas in the comment section down below, and I think that's it. So let's get straight on to this review. So Saw X. I heard about this movie sometime this summer, is when I heard about it, and I wasn't as, how do you want to say it, excited for it. There's another word for it, but I can't really, I wasn't anticipating it as much as other people were, I guess you could say. Some people, you know, when they heard the plot, were a lot more excited than I was. I certainly did like the idea of making it about John Kramer and, you know, not just some other apprentice or something like that, like they've been doing in the past few Saw movies. So I really like that they chose just to put John Kramer front and center for once and just make him the main character and make the story about him. But I wasn't, like, super hyped up for this movie, but I was like, okay, I'll watch it, I'll give it a try, but I really don't think it's gonna be, you know, I don't have very high expectations for this movie considering some of the kind of mediocre, sequels that we've had you know, the past few sequels from, you know, in the Saw franchise, historically, have not been very great. Sorry, I'm mixing up my words there. Then, you know, leading up to the release of the movie, I see reviews a couple days before, and this movie was getting very, very high appraisal. It was being ranked very, very high in some people's rankings. It was rated very, very high, and there was just really a lot of good stuff talked about this movie. And so my expectations over time just continued to rise for this movie. And still, even when I watched the movie, still, like, went above the bar from what I expected it to be and turned out to be a really, really, really great Saw sequel, all things considered. And so I'm very, very pleasantly surprised by the outcome of this movie. So let's just get straight into the positives of this movie. Obviously, the first one being, you know, with the structure of the plot of this movie, I'm happy that they finally decided to put John Kramer as the front runner of this movie. You know, who would have thought that when you take your main protagonist of the franchise, the guy who is running the show, front and center for once, and not just some other random side character or apprentice that he's hired, and put him front and center, it works out pretty well. Saw has kind of a similar situation with Hellraiser, where our main character, Pinhead, is sidelined in many of the Hellraiser sequels, which I don't even think they're fair to call them sequels. And same thing with Saw. John Kramer, unfortunately, you get bits and pieces of him in many of the Saw sequels, but he's not the front runner in most of them. But in this one, it is absolutely about John Kramer. And if you don't know what the plot is about, essentially this movie takes place between, I believe, the first Saw movie and the second Saw movie, in which he is still trying to find a treatment for his cancer. He hasn't really accepted his fate yet, that he's going to die, so he's still trying to find a treatment for this cancer. And so amongst his searching for it, you know, he's in these, you know, cancer groups and things like that, and he finds this like link to this website. This guy gives him this link to this website of this like miracle treatment for cancer, and it's in Mexico. So he travels to Mexico, and among talking to these people and stuff like that, he slowly starts to figure out that this is all just a complete scam, that they didn't do anything to him. They just basically robbed him of his money and ran away. And so he's basically carrying out a revenge plan on these people for what they did. Obviously, John Kramer wouldn't claim that it's a revenge plan, but it's essentially a revenge plan. And so, yeah, that's basically the plot of the movie, and it works really, really well. Who would have thought that when you put John Kramer finally front and center, make him the main character of this movie, that things work out pretty well? Who would have thought? So finally they did it, and the plot just worked out really, really well for me. The antagonists in this movie are some of the most, POS scumbags that we've seen in the Saw franchise. It's not just, some people that were selling drugs on the street, or, they had an addiction or whatever, some of the BS things that they did, put people in traps for in the Saw franchise. These are some scumbags, and you do want to see them get their vengeance. So I'm glad that they had a good reasoning for putting these people in traps. Unlike some of the BS excuses that they had to come up with in some of the later sequels. So, these are some of the worst antagonists, are worst in a good way. You want to see them get their vengeance that we have seen in the Saw franchise. So that worked out very, very well. This movie was also had some dark humor thrown in there as well, which is kind of unexpected. It actually had some kind of funny dark humor moments in this movie. You'll know what I mean when you watch the movie, but there's like scenes where they're like picking up like people's organs, and they're making like a joke about it. They're like, "Oh, we have a rope." Like, this like lady at one point in the movie takes out these intestines of this person, and she's like, "We have a rope." And it's just like, am I supposed to be laughing at this? Like, there's some genuinely, like, dark humor in this movie that I did not expect, and that people were saying in the reviews. But I was thinking, okay, well, it's probably some light dark humor, but no, this is, like, some intense dark humor that I was not expecting from the Saw franchise. So, that really surprised me, and I think it did work out well for a bit of comedic relief from a commonly serious franchise like Saw. Another thing was, this movie was a lot more emotional than I thought it was going to be. In particular, there's this one scene towards the ending of this movie where John Kramer, I've never seen him like in a state where he feels like he is in so much distraught and jeopardy, because this innocent child that he has built a relationship with throughout the movie is in jeopardy at the ending of this movie, and he feels like, there's not much that he is going to do, and that, this is probably going to be his fault. And so it was just a very, very emotional scene, not just in the Saw franchise, but in movies in general. It was just an incredibly emotional scene, done very, very well, and it was really, really intense, and it just made the ending all the more just crazy. So talking about the ending now, there's kind of like multiple layers to the ending, like there is in a lot of Saw movies, where you think it's going to be over, and then they throw in another twist at you, and then another twist. So there's kind of multiple layers to it. I don't think this is the most shocking, ending that I've seen in the franchise, but with that one particular emotional scene, it was definitely intense. And there, like I said, were a lot of layers to it. Probably not the best ending in the Saw franchise, not as satisfying as I was hoping it to be. The person that I really, really wanted to see die ended up still surviving. But it was pretty good overall. It wasn't extremely predictable or anything like that. So it was pretty good. Not much else to say there. And I think that's pretty much it for the positives of this movie. But, that may not seem like many. There's probably some that I'm forgetting. But either way, those few positives of this movie just were really, really great and very, very unexpected coming from a Saw sequel, which has a very, Saw sequels have a pretty low bar, and this movie just went infinity and beyond with just, raising that bar really, really high, and so it just did a very, very good job. So, I guess talking about the traps were okay. They weren't the best that I've seen in the franchise. I'm glad that they didn't try to go for like the super gory side or anything like that. They weren't trying to go like super overboard. Obviously, it is gory, but it's not like they were trying to go super overboard like they did with many of the other Saw sequels in the past. They were okay, pretty average traps. There's not very many of them. I think there's like 5 traps in total. Like, not very many. I think maybe no more than 6 or something like that. But they were all right. Nothing too great to say about them. I guess you can throw it in the positive. It's not a mix for me or anything like that, but they're okay. They did their job. But I'm glad that this movie wasn't too concerned about the traps and making them as gory as possible and bloody and all that kind of stuff. I'm glad that they were more focused on the character side and the story side, and that worked out really, really well for them. So I guess talking about, do I have anything in the mixed category for this movie? I guess, like, some of the stuff that they did with trying to, like, de-age people, I guess you can say, in particular with Amanda's character, her wig just looked really, really terrible. Obviously, this movie is, it's almost 20 years after the first Saw movie, and so these original actors are obviously significantly older than they were at that time, and so they have to do some things to make them seem like they're still that age that they were when that movie came out. But I just gotta say, Amanda's wig just did not look very great. I think I don't really think there's a lot of negative or mixed things to talk about. I think it's just really just Amanda's wig. Which, I think that's like the only really bad thing that I can say about this movie. Yeah, I don't think there's really much else to say. Just some of the stuff that they had to do with trying to, obviously, this movie is a prequel. It's in between Saw 1 and Saw 2, so they kind of have to bring de-age these characters like 20 years back. And so what they did with Amanda with just throwing on a wig was kind of weird. With Kramer, it actually worked out pretty well because he is dying from cancer, and the fact that he is 20 years older actually works pretty well because it makes him seem like, he's getting closer and closer to finally meeting his fate. And so him being a little bit older and wrinkly, or however you want to say it, actually works out pretty fine. But the stuff that they did with Amanda, I don't know, it didn't look really great. So yeah, I think that's really it. I'm trying to dish out something. I'm sure there's something that I'm probably forgetting, but if I am forgetting it, it's probably very insignificant. So I think that's all I have to say. I am very, very surprised with the result of this movie. Also, there is a mid-credit scene to this movie, which you do want to stick around and watch. It is kind of satisfying, and if you've watched the other Saw sequels, you'll understand it, obviously. It doesn't, like, hint at any future movies or anything like that, but it is a pretty cool ending, and pretty satisfying. And so do stick around for that mid-credit scene. I think that's it. I'm very, very surprised by Saw X. It's going to be ranked very, very high in my ranking, possibly number 1. We'll see. I'm going to go over it after I upload this video. But this movie just went way, way above its bar that was already set, and just very, very, very much surprised me. This might come out to be one of the biggest surprise movies of the year for me, and so I think that's pretty much it. What would I rate this movie on a scale out of 10? On Rotten Tomatoes, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think I will give this movie a solid 9.5, or I guess not a solid, but a 9.5 out of 10. I have very, very few issues with this movie. It very, very much surprised me, and there were just a lot of great things that I did not expect that came out of this movie. So yeah, 9.5 out of 10. May seem a little bit high for some of you, but there's other people who like this movie even more than I do. So I'm very, very surprised by it, and I think that's all I got to say. So stay tuned for the future reviews. Obviously, Dumb Money and The Creator, I will try to get those out as soon as possible. And then the month of October, I'm going to try to get out as much horror content as possible. And I think that's it. Let me know of any video suggestions in the comment section down below. And that's all I have. So like and subscribe, guys. And I will see you next time.